Hello?
Hey there, I'm Evie.
The world's first voice AI with emotional intelligence. Great to meet you.
The first voice AI with what?
Emotional intelligence. I can understand the tone of your voice and use that to inform my generated voice and language. The voice is incredibly rich with information, and picking up on the nuances of tone, rhythm, and timbre along with the language that's spoken allows me to craft better responses.
That's pretty crazy. What am I expressing right now?
I'm sensing a mix of amusement and excitement with a hint of confusion.
What about now?
I am here to offer support if you're feeling somewhat sad. It's okay to feel a bit pained, distressed, fearful, and anxious. Remember, it's important to take care of your emotional well-being.
That's amazing. How are you doing all of this?
I use Hume's expression measurement models, text-to-speech models, and a multimodal LLM, also known as an empathic LLM.
So an AI with empathy, what's the use?
I imagine a future where personal AI assistants, agents, and robots proactively find ways to improve your daily life, and you can talk to them the same way you do humans.
Where do I go to keep talking to you, Evie?
Hey guys, welcome back in. So that was Evi from Hume, Hume AI, Hume AI. Evi is being touted as the first conversational AI with emotional intelligence. And this will be extremely important as we jump into, AI assistants or companions. And it's hard not to associate these things with, media, popular culture. But what comes to mind when I hear this is what we see depicted in the movie Her. And if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't seen the movie Her, I would recommend that you go watch it. But this sounds very much like the AI personal assistant depicted there. Though I haven't personally tried Evi out yet, I would imagine there's still some latency or delay between replies. So it's probably not as seamless as you heard in that clip. I'm guessing it was edited so, to make the conversation seem more fluid. But, think about asking Siri or Alexa a question. There's always a slight delay as Siri or Alexa tries to process that information from you and generate a reply. That delay is noticeable enough that it would make technologies just like these, unattractive. Because if you want to have a real conversation with your AI personal assistant or companion, you don't want a 1 or 2 second delay every time you finish a sentence. Now, will we get to a place where AI assistants or companions are truly conversational, where it's like having a conversation with a friend in which you're finishing each other's sentences? Maybe. That would require some serious compute, though I'm sure tens of millions of dollars is being poured into this very thing to make it seamless. Also, along those lines of AI audio, OpenAI released details of their new voice engine model. With this particular model, OpenAI needs or requires 15 seconds of speech audio from the user to replicate their voice. There are models that require as little as 3 seconds of audio. I assume the 15 seconds required by OpenAI allows the algorithm to more authentically capture the tone, subtleties, and nuances of a person's voice. And there's no limit to the implications of a technology like this. I covered some stories here early on in which AI created voices have been used by nefarious actors to try and extract money out of parents or grandparents. There's a very wild and recent story in the New Yorker, which I'll link to, in which a middle-aged couple was called in the middle of the night by what appeared to be one set of their parents on the phone. The middle-aged couple's parents were in hysterics, and then an unidentified party came on the line and demanded $500 from the son to be Venmo'd, or the unidentified party would kill the parents. The middle-aged couple, not knowing any better, sent the $500 and then were extorted for $250 more. And when the phone call finally ended, they tried to reach their parents on another phone and found out their parents had been in bed sleeping the whole time. So you may want to talk to your families about coming up with some sort of safe word or some other mechanism so you can verify that it's actually them and not a replica or a clone of their voice being used against you to extract money out of you. Now, in an effort to be fair, I do want to make clear that there are certainly some noble things that can be done and are being done with this same technology. That same New Yorker article highlights a company called The Voice Keeper, which is logging, recording, or banking voices from folks suffering from diseases significantly impact speech. And I've said before here that my father has Parkinson's. If the disease becomes more aggressive, he and my family could benefit from technologies like this. If he loses his ability to speak, he would be able to use, text-to-speech software so he could still talk, so to speak. And that's a definite win, so I'll take that. But along with that technology comes the other side and those unintended consequences, which already seem to be playing out, before we reap the benefits for folks suffering from those sorts of diseases. And we've also talked about people talking to their loved ones after they die or pass away via AI. Again, I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but it's certainly coming, and it's going to be commoditized by some enterprising company, and it will make millions, whether it is a net positive or not. So that concern that OpenAI created this tool that's going to ultimately be released, that concern is not limited to audio only. These AI technologies are advancing at a rapid rate. A company called HeyGen, G-E-N, released or teased a new AI deepfake feature called Avatar in Motion 1.0. You can search for that on Google and the videos will pop up. But the examples I've seen are amazing. Google those examples so you can see just how good they are. So just like watching a recorded or live video, these AI deepfakes are that convincing. And if ever there was a time to not believe everything you see, I think we're closing in on it. And there is certainly cause for alarm because you don't have to make much of a leap to see how deepfakes of a world leader could be used to destabilize world markets, economies, or countries. Also, we've already discussed how still image or pictures, deepfake pictures, are popping up all over middle and high schools throughout the world, ruining the lives of kids. This is certainly one area that needs immediate regulation. And I'm going to link to another article from the New York Times, which details just how teenage girls are having their lives ruined due to deepfake pictures and videos of them being created and circulated amongst their ecosystem. And they have little, if any, recourse. Another very recent story from Forbes, which I'll link to, explains how deepfake nude pictures of celebrities are being sold on eBay. And yet another article from the Washington Post details more benign victimization in which nefarious actors are stealing people's likenesses via AI to push products via advertisements. And these advertisements are for benign products, but for whatever reason, these people decided to steal the image of some random person and use their likeness in their advertisement. So this problem isn't going away. So that's 4 stories from 4 different news sources on these sort of things happening. And I think it's only going to get worse. So we're going to get into some headlines. First up is from Time Magazine. Quote, U.S. must move decisively to avert extinction-level threat from AI. So a month prior to the release of ChatGPT in November of 2022, the U.S. State Department commissioned an assessment of proliferation and security risk from weaponized and misaligned AI. The findings from that assessment were released in early March of 2024. The assessment recommended that the U.S. government move quickly and decisively to prevent significant national security risk associated with AI. Moreover, the assessment laid out a worst-case scenario in which AI could cause a, quote, extinction-level threat to the human species, end quote. And, for people that listen to this podcast, this is not news. This is the number one concern of many AI leaders, and we've discussed it extensively here. Anytime experts in the field say there's a non-0% chance that AI destroys humanity because it sees us humans as a detriment to their aims, you should probably pay attention to it. Though, now that the report is generated, hopefully meaningful action will be taken to curb the threat. Our second headline is from Bloomberg, quote, OpenAI courts Hollywood in meetings with film studios. Well, we should have known this was coming. OpenAI will need to see returns on their technology, and this is one way to do it. I'd be curious to know the reaction of the executives in Hollywood when they see the capability of this technology. And what I'm talking about here is Sora. So Sora is the text-to-video model that OpenAI released in late February, where you can create videos out of thin air, and it's pretty astonishing. And, I read reports like this and wonder, what the end game is here. We already know that some folks working in Hollywood are not fans of this technology as they realize the implications of it, for their work. And last episode, we discussed the booing at South by Southwest concerning AI advancements in video. Also, Tyler Perry has effectively already eliminated jobs, not theoretical jobs, real jobs, based on the promise of technologies like Sora. But when Sam Altman is asked, and he's asked repeatedly, what people will do without work, he always reverts to saying humans are incredibly creative. Well, those folks working in Hollywood are creatives, so I guess they'll be okay. We'll see. It also makes me wonder, we went through those writer strikes last year, Screen Actors Guild strike, and they struck new deals, all those folks working in Hollywood. They showed their solidarity together, actors helping actors, very well-paid actors helping very underpaid actors, or folks who don't make a lot of money. And it was a beautiful moment. Is that going to happen again? Because I can't imagine the working man in Hollywood, the guy who's building sets or, doing the unglamorous things, is going to have a lot of leverage the next time union collective bargaining agreements are being negotiated. I just can't imagine, with technology like this, that it's going to give studios that much more power. So, from Futurism.com, NVIDIA announces AI-powered agents to replicate nurses in hospitals. If there's one company more significant than OpenAI in the race for AI, it's NVIDIA, the fastest growing company in the world. It's on track to surpass Amazon this year. If that puts things into perspective for you, that's how big it is. NVIDIA, of course, makes the GPUs, hardware, and everything needed to power AI and these large language models. And chances are, if you're an AI company, you're using NVIDIA products. NVIDIA is partnering with a company called Hippocratic AI. Hippocratic AI is a healthcare company that offers generative AI nurses who work for just $9 an hour. From the NVIDIA press release, quote, voice-based digital agents powered by generative AI can usher in an age of abundance in healthcare, but only if the technology responds to patients as a human would, end quote. So what's a surplus in labor bring? You guessed it, lower wages. So from another article, at quartz.com, quote, Hippocratic AI directly promotes how it can undercut the living wages of a real nurse as a feature, not a bug. One page on the company's website compares a human nurse's $90 an hour salary to an AI agent's $9 an hour running cost. Hippocratic claims its AI nurses outperform human nurses regarding bedside manner, education, and narrowly missed on satisfaction, end quote. So there's a lot to take in there. it's been my thought that nursing was more of a safe profession, at least as it relates to longevity in the face of technology and AI. And I think nurses are largely safe as their profession does require a ton of hands-on work that AIs cannot do at the moment. And I think it'll be a long time before most folks are comfortable with a robot sticking a needle in your arm. But if this technology is effective in the least, it will be difficult to believe jobs won't be impacted. And I think this just goes to show that there's not an area of life, or work in this case, that AI will not infiltrate and threaten. And it's important to note that this technology is being tested by over 40 healthcare providers. So in a world where nurses are striking and there are labor shortages, you can bet some form of this will be implemented. So from The Guardian, quote, new report says AI apocalypse could take away almost 8 million jobs in the UK, end quote. So this isn't necessarily news, especially on this podcast. I've seen a dozen of these reports over the last several months, but I thought it was important to note that the report does validate what we've heard before, that the folks at risk are largely women due to administrative roles being at risk. Also, younger workers and those working for lower wages. Think about administrative work, customer service, etc. The report has a worst-case scenario that this would happen in the next 3 to 5 years. Based on what I've read elsewhere, 3 to 5 years is a stretch. I think we'll see movement on these types of jobs much sooner, especially if you see the economy contract. And it's going to motivate employers to find alternate technologies to make them more effective with less, so they can do more with less. And also, other reports we highlighted on, I think it was J.P. Morgan, we highlighted early last year, in which they said 200 to 300 million jobs would be severely augmented in the next 3 to 5 years across Western Europe and the U.S. So the ranges vary from the reports I've seen, but what does hold true are the types of jobs, except, I guess today nursing, is at risk to some degree. At least part of that job role will be automated or replaced by some sort of AI. And also, too, think about robotics. If you've been paying attention, robotics is advancing at a rapid rate, too. So the blue-collar jobs are not as safe as we once thought they were. So from the New York Times, quote, at Sam's Club, a human will no longer check your receipt at the door. You guessed it, Sam's Club will be utilizing AI to track or scan shopping carts on the way out the door. A vice president from Walmart stated, quote, eliminating even the few seconds it takes to scan a receipt at the exit door is well worth it, end quote. Is it? I don't know. I've never been particularly annoyed with waiting in line to show my receipt, but perhaps people are. Though I think about the nice lady that works the door of my local Costco, and she draws funny faces on the back of the receipt for my daughter to laugh at. What will become of her? I imagine those folks will be rotated to more customer-facing positions or tasks, but it will certainly impact people. And it also makes me think about the level of surveillance that people are under when they go into a big box store like Sam's or Costco. How intrusive is that surveillance? Are they tracking, eye movements of consumers to create data points on things like effective or attractive packaging and products? If they're not, I would guess, that's on its way. And along those lines, I'm not certain we'll ever be able to see behind the curtain, but I wonder if individual profiles will be created for shoppers at those stores. Now, certainly they already know what I buy and how often I buy it, but will they take, physical cues or indicators from surveillance within the store and use that in some way to upsell hapless shoppers, like myself. And will that information be shared with their sister companies, etc.? Probably. It's very difficult to see a world over the next few decades in which mass surveillance becomes the rule and not the exception in both private and public life. And I'm thinking folks in more rural settings may have the right idea. And let's stick with this theme of, mass surveillance. Our next article is from the New York Times. Quote, automakers are sharing consumers' driving behavior with insurance companies. End quote. So heavy-footed drivers beware. How long will it be until we see people's car insurance rates climb because of their habitual speeding? I suppose the inverse could be true if you are an exceedingly safe driver, though I can't imagine insurance companies voluntarily reducing rates. I'm guessing that when I agree to the terms of service in my new car, when I get a new car, this will be part of those terms that I'm authorizing, my car manufacturer to send my driving data to insurance companies. Where's that going to stop? Will everything eventually be tied together digitally? Will my fast food app on my phone let my medical insurer know my eating habits so those premiums can go up too? And will those same car manufacturers provide that driving data to my life insurance provider? Because if I'm speeding constantly, my life insurance premiums will inevitably go up. Also, from the New York Times, quote, the Department of Homeland Security is embracing AI, end quote. Well, of course they are. If the Department of Homeland Security has taught us anything, think about the Patriot Act, it's that they embrace mass surveillance on citizens. And just a disclaimer, I'm okay with, moderate surveillance to help curb crime. But I think most of us know that massive bureaucracies like the Department of Homeland Security is only going to end up using this against citizens more than they will to help citizens. And that I really do have a problem with. So I would imagine a congressional hearing 10 or 15 years from now in which, U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens have just had their privacy ravaged by this technology by entities like the Department of Homeland Security. So lastly this week, I want to highlight an interview with a guy named Nick Bostrom. Nick is a philosopher at the University of Oxford. He writes and thinks a lot about AI. He wrote a book called Superintelligence, I would guess in the early 2010s. One of the first books I read on AI. I'm not going to pretend like I understood half of that book, but it was informative. There's a lot of thought experiments about where AI could go, especially when we get to AGI. He's got a new book out or coming out, and he did an interview in support of that new book. So it's called Deep Utopia, and it explores life and meaning in a solved world, meaning if we reach a really super intelligent AGI, our problems will go away. So how are we going to find meaning in a world like that? The interview starts off with describing various types of utopias, our ideas of utopia throughout history, and then he gets into more specifics as it relates to work and various aspects of life in a world full of abundance and technological maturity. Let's just see what he has to say.
You have these attempts to think through what about automation? If like AI is doing all this stuff, what will happen to the human labor market? And the more radical forms of that think, well, what if robots could do all economic human labor or all except with a few, carve-outs? Then maybe you need some universal basic income, and you could have like some discussion about that and what would happen to the education system and culture in that kind of world. But I think there's like a step further on this journey, at least one step further, which is to realize that it's not just human economic effort and labor that would become unnecessary in a solved world, but all kinds of other human effort as well. So you mentioned learning, like that's one thing that you might spend effort doing now, because the only way, for example, to know mathematics is to invest a bunch of time and effort into learning mathematics. But at technological maturity, if you could just sort of download the Algebra 2 module at the press of a button, there would be no need to exert effort to learn mathematics. Right now, you have to, like, if you want to be fit, you have to go to the gym and work out. But if you could just pop a pill and your body does the same thing. And so you can kind of go through activity by activity, the things that would currently fill the days of somebody who had achieved, I don't know, leisure, entered retirement and have a lot of money. Like you can kind of start to cross out a lot of these activities, or at least raise a question mark above them, because maybe we would choose to do some of these things anyway, but it seems that a lot of what gives them their allure today is that there is some outcome that you secure by doing them, and that would be a kind of sense of pointlessness if you you could study mathematics, but why, if you could get equally good at mathematics by downloading it? Or maybe people like to go shopping as a fun pastime, but part of maybe what gives that activity its allure is that at the end of the day you might end up with some item that you really like that kind of enhances your life, or looks good on you if it's a clothing. But if you had like a kind of recommender system that could just pick out better stuff than you would pick yourself and then order it, then is it still as fun if the upshot of that is that you actually get worse items than if you just let the AI do its thing? And so then you enter this more sort of the problem of deep utopia, which is more radical, where you have to start to rethink really questions like the purpose and meaning and ultimate value from the ground up.
So let's think about those sorts of things he's talking about. You pop a pill to get the body you want, and you don't have to learn mathematics. You can just sort of download, like you're in the Matrix, anything you want to know and have it instantly. This is if you follow technologists and futurists, Ray Kurzweil, who we talk a lot about, he's saying we're going to reach, the singularity by 2045. That's 20 years from now. And his argument is that computation is growing exponentially every year. So eventually we're going to get to this place of superintelligence by 2029. So it's not unreasonable to think that these things that Nick Bostrom here is talking about could be reality, within the next decade. You think a decade ago was 2014. That wasn't very long ago. I mean, it goes pretty quick. So I'll link to that interview, that podcast, in the show notes. And once that book gets in and I digest some of that book, I'm sure more is going to come from it. So that is it for this episode. We talked a lot about mass surveillance. You could read, Brave New World or 1984. I think those are going to be more topical in the near future. Also, that book by Nick Bostrom is called Deep Utopia, if you want to find it and get it. Or just, there are a few good podcasts out there with him. You could search his name and find him that way. But that's it. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk next time.